computer science and programming language Java, and we are discussing the issue of inheritance. And we remember that in inheritance we have a parent class and a child class. And we discussed in a previous video that it is possible in inheritance for the child class to write again from scratch a same method that already exists at the parent class. So if the child class wants to take the same methods exactly with the same signature that exists in the parent class and write it again, give it a different content, then it is possible. And however, I have noticed in some books that are being used in classes of programming language Java, that it is said in those books that it is not advisable and it is not recommended to do the same thing with variables. So when it comes to methods, it is okay to override, to write again the same methods with the same signature in the child class as the same as they exist in the parent class with the same signature, to write them again in the and to give them a different content in the child class. However, it is said that it is not good and it's not recommended to do the same with variables. And when someone is doing it and is declaring again a variable with the same name in the child class and uses the same name that exists in the parent class, it is called hiding or shadowing of the variable. And in this video, I will try to show what is so wrong with doing that. What can happen if someone decides to declare again a variable with the same name that exists at the parent class, to again declare a variable with the same name in the child class. So I will show what is confusing and what is wrong about it in this video. So I will use an example of a parent class that I will call that class electronics, as in electronic devices. And this class also has a child class, and the child class represents some kind of electronic, and the child class name is phone. So we have the parent class electronics and the child class phone. And let's assume that the parent class has a variable and it also has a method. So the variable that the parent class has is a variable named price. And this is a variable of type string. And the objects of the parent class that will hold this instance variable, the value that they will hold is the string value that says electronics are expensive. And regarding the same parent class electronics, it also has a method. And I call this method print. And it also has, of course, parentheses. In my example, there are no parameters in the parentheses. And what this method does in the parent class, it prints something to the screen. What does it print to the screen in my example? It prints to the screen the sentence, "I love electronics." So these are the variable and method that exist in the parent class electronics. Now let's look at the child class. The child class name is phone. And since it inherits everything from the parent class, so also this class has a variable named price and a method named print. But our programmer decides in this child class to do something that is completely fine, which is to override the method. So our programmer decides that he or she will write again the same method exactly as it exists in the parent class. They will use the same signature of the method print. And now they will, in the child class, they will give it a different content. In the child class, this method print will print to the screen the sentence, "I love phones." And our programmers decide to do also something that is not advisable, that we as programmers are supposed not to do, but in this example we will do it. What our programmers decide to do is to also write again and declare again in the child class the same variable with the same name that exists in the parent class. So in the parent class we have the variable called price of type string, and our programmers, even though it is not advisable, they will do what they will do in the child class. They will again declare a variable with the same name that exists in the parent class. The variable name will be price. In this example, we will keep the same type. We'll also declare this variable as a string in the child class, even though we, in order to get this effect of hiding or shadowing, we can also use a different type, such as a Boolean or a double or int or whatever. But for this example, we will stay with the same type. But the important thing for this effect of shadowing or hiding is to use the same name of the variable as exists at the parent's class. So we will call that variable price, just as its name is in the parent class. So in the child class, this variable price is going to get all of the objects of the child class. The variable price in the child class, they will get a different value than it was in the parent class, and the value will be that the price will hold the value. The variable price will hold the value of string. That is the following sentence. The sentence is, phones are cheap. Okay, so let's now assume, to test everything that we just did, that we are creating a different class named test, and this class has a method that is called main, and this main that will be our driver, this method main is now building a few objects. So let's begin with the building of an object of the parent. So our method main is now using the word new to build an object of electronics of the parent class, and also the reference that hold that object will be electronics. So now and let's call that object E, because E is the first letter of the word electronics. So now if we will, in this method of ours, the main method, we will try to call or to reach the variable of the object E, which is an object of electronics, we will get the variable just as it is written in the parent class. So the variable price of the object E of electronics holds the value electronics are expensive. And if we will now try to reach the method, or to call the method of this object E of electronics, the method that we called print. So if we will now call the method print on this object E, we will receive the performance that was written in the parent class. So what this method print will show, if we will call it on this object E of electronics, it will print on the screen the sentence, I love electronics. And now, if our method main will create a new object, but this object will be of the child class phone. So now if our method main will build an object of phone, and the reference that is holding this object is also of phone, the child class. In this case, let's call this object P, because P is the first letter of the word phone. So now if we will try to reach the variable of this object P, which is an object of phone, we will reach the value of this variable that exists in the child class. So the variable price of the object P holds the string that says phones are cheap. And if we will now try to call the method, and to call the method through the object P, the object of phone, and we will try to run the method print on this object P of phone, what will be printed on the screen is what we saw that the code of the child class says that this method includes. So if we will call the method print on the object P, what will be written on the screen is the sentence "I love phones," which is a sentence that is being it is what is written in the code of the child class. So until now everything seems very reasonable. So what's the problem? The problem begins if we will do something that is allowed in inheritance, and this is if we will now in our main method we will create an object of phone, an object of the type of the child class, but the reference that will hold that object, the referent that will point to that object or will hold it, will be a reference of the parent class, electronics. So in this situation, which is completely allowed in inheritance, it is allowed to create a new object of a child class and that the reference that will hold that object is of the parent class. So let's call this kind of object EP, E for electronics and P for phone. But this is an object of phone. It is just being held by a reference of the parent class electronics. So now, if we will call the variable of this object EP, the variable price, the value that we will receive is the value that is written in the code of the parent electronics. So if I'm trying to reach or to call or to use the variable price of this object EP, which is a phone object, but the reference to it is a reference of the parent electronics, the value that I will receive is the value that says electronics are expensive. It is the value that it was written in the code of the parent. And the reason for that is that in Java, the objects receive their variables at the compilation time. So when the code is compiled, the object receives its variables according to the reference that hold it. And in this case, the reference is of electronics. And if I'm now going to use this object EP, which is a phone object that is being held by an electronics reference, if I'm going to use this EP object in order to run the method print, the method print that is going to run is the method print that exists in the child class. And the reason for that is, and what is going to be written on the screen when I call this method print on this object EP, what is going to be printed on the screen is the sentence, "I love phones," just as it is written in the child class. And the reason for that is that the binding of the methods to the object happens in Java in runtime, not in the compilation time, but in the runtime. And what happens in runtime is that Java looks and the computer checks what type is the object. And this object is of type phone. And it does not matter what is the reference that holds that object. So the methods are being bind to the object according to its type. And in this case, the type is phone. So the method that is going to run on EP when we call that method is the print method that from the child class. So we receive this very unusual situation, and it is quite confusing, to say the truth, that on this object EP, when we try to reach and to call its variables, we receive the value of the variables as was written and described in the code of the parent class. But when we try to use the methods of this object EP, the methods that run are the methods from the child class. So this is very unusual and it is quite confusing. And I believe that this is the reason why our books that teach us Java programming, they recommend that we as programmers will not do this shadow or hiding of variables in the child class, and that we will not declare again in the child class a variable that exists already with the same name in the parent class. I hope you find this explanation informative. Thank you for watching.